Why don't we start off our discussion, I guess, with what I was mentioning earlier, since it won't seem too off the beaten path or whatever, with Cards Against Humanity. So the two things that I really kind of want to discuss about it, since we both played the game, we're familiar with it. One is it really a game? And two is it like a theme that we really should have in this world? Like, either from a Christian sense or a non-Christian sense, do you feel that there's some sort of ethical standard for people that create themes in games? So those are kind of two things that if you want to just riff on.
Well, okay, restate the first question. We'll talk a little bit about that before
First one
elaborating
is
on the
Cards
second
Against
thing.
Humanity. Cards Against Humanity, they call it a game. Is it really a game?
I think
Or is it an activity?
I would put it into, yes, it's a game because it brings people together doing something together. But it can be considered an activity. It depends on your definition of what a game is or what the goal of the game is. I think it's more of a party game where you're just more so socializing with a group of friends over a theme. I know some Cards Against Humanity, they're different themes. I know there's the black box, for example.
Okay.
I know there are other themes out there, whether if it's like Harry Potter theme. I think I've seen like a Star Wars themed. I'm sure there's a Game of Thrones themed type, Cards Against Humanity. But I find it more of like a party game, kind of bringing people together more so. It is a silly game, kind of play on words kind of game that can make people laugh. Yes, it can be inappropriate. I think in any type of game, you can make that game inappropriate, no matter what the game is. You can turn it to be inappropriate. I think a lot of people think of Cards Against Humanity as a party game, and it's also a sense of being inappropriate, which is why a lot of people play it while they're drinking or whatever. But there's a lot of other games I've played that you can make inappropriate. So it kind of depends on your group and your perspective or purpose of the game. Obviously the black box is going to be a little bit more inappropriate for that specific reason.
But that's to jump in, that's the whole thing, is that you're making it inappropriate because you and your friends are deciding to go there with the game, as opposed to game designers coming up with these cards and these things saying, we're going to take this inappropriateness and we're going to shove it on you.
Right.
Like,
it depends on the
what
specific theme about. Because you can play, there are different themes to Cards Against Humanity. So if you just want to stick playing with the Star Wars box, then do that. But obviously the black box, for example, is made to be inappropriate. So it's going to automatically kind of bring you to that frame of mind.
Well, let's call a spade here. It's apples to apples, essentially. Sure. That's essentially what it is.
Yes,
it's just incredibly offensive or naughty or whatever. And so it's like, if I want to play that kind of a gameplay, we can play apples to apples, or we can play some other games that have sprung up because Cards Against Humanity has become so popular. But playing Cards Against Humanity,
sure,
I don't consider it a game, and I'll tell you why. Because, and a lot of people are like, oh, because you're a strategic gamer and there's no strategy
and you can earn points and sure.
No, that's actually not it.
Okay.
That's a misnomer about me. I don't consider it a game because it doesn't really matter who wins or loses, and there's really no ending to the game. The activity. I've played multiple times where it's like, oh, the first person. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, because I honestly don't know, nor do I care. But it's like the first person to collect 5 cards wins, or something along
that lines. Yeah.
I have never played it like that, where it's like 5 cards. Oh, I win. Good job, Uncle Joe. You're the winner. Now we can put it away and play something else. No, it's always, we just play until we get bored and we just do something else. Which means it's just really not a game. It's really not about,
and I do agree with that, because there becomes kind of more of a social activity. You play until you don't want to play anymore. No, I've played Apples to Apples, which is super lighthearted. I've played the Disney version. We own the black box. We own different versions. How often do we actually break it out? very rarely, you know, because you have to have the right group of friends who want to kind of dive into that kind of activity. But it's like you could play it for 30 minutes and be done. We played it where we just played it for hours because it was enjoyable
Right.
or funny or whatever, but it's the type of game where you could just start and stop it whenever you like.
Yeah. So it's
So
not
yeah,
about
so in
like,
that sense, is it really a game? We call it a game. I guess I call it more like just like a social activity, you
right.
know.
I'm
Party
exactly there.
game, maybe. I know a lot. I mean, you go to the store, you're going to kind of find it in the party game section of board games. You're not going to necessarily go find it with, you know, shoots and ladders or the strategic games. It's kind of off with all the other kind of fun, random, inappropriate party games
But there
because you
are
play it.
there are party games out there that I would say absolutely, definitely, this is a game, even
Mm-hmm,
though it's a party game. But there is a like beginning, a structure, an ending, a way to win. You know, the game ends when the game says it ends. I recently just talked about Time's Up or monikers, I guess if you have monikers. And that is an awesome party game. It is my number one favorite party game of all time. I play it every year with my family, but it's absolutely a game because you're collecting points. You know,
mm-hmm.
you move through the different rounds. Cards Against Humanity doesn't present any of that for me,
Right. And I
anyways.
think in that respect, yeah, it kind of goes back to the once a person gets so many cards, the game ends. But that also has a discrepancy because you could say, oh, well, let's play till someone gets 3 or 5 or 7. Hence, the game can go on and on and on as
Yeah.
long as you want to.
So moving into the second part, I'm actually going to frame it by starting off by talking about movies, and then eventually I'll ramble back into Cards Against Humanity.
Okay, go
So
for it.
there's a director. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with Quentin Tarantino.
Mm-hmm,
And so Quentin Tarantino is known, which first of all, I'm not a fan. He is known for his style of movies to be incredibly kind of offensive,
mm-hmm,
very violent, very over the top.
mm-hmm.
He's been criticized a lot. He's been asked by interviewers, by um, journalists and stuff, whether if he feels like any moral obligation to, you know, his movies of not being so like racial and violent. Excuse me. His answer, basically, from what I've seen, is basically just kind of piss off. Like he's like, I don't owe an answer to anybody about what I make, and so I'm not going to sit and talk about it. But that's kind of the thing, is some people think that like, hey, you as a creator, as a director, you owe
Mm-hmm.
something to the public to like not do these types of things. Do we think that that's something that we could see in board games? And I'll give another example before we start talking about Cards Against Humanity, because that's one that I know that you know. I played a game a few weeks ago, or not a few weeks ago, a few years ago. Wow, a few years ago. I do not know the name of it. It is Japanese themed, anime themed. It's a deck builder similar to Dominion, very similar to Dominion, that from what I can remember is you are playing the master of this house, of like a mansion, and you are collecting females like as these submissives. You are like
Mm-hmm.
collecting submissive, scantily clad, animated styled. You know what I'm talking about, like very high skirts and butt cheeks kind of sticking out of the undies and stuff. Like we've all seen that that sort of sexy anime stuff. That's the artwork, and the theme is that you're collecting these submissive girls for your like 50 shades of gray sort of type theme. I remember playing it. I was in a social situation, meaning I was not at home. I was in a uh, public place, and I was incredibly like, people could walk by, catch some of the cards or something, see some of these like big breasted sort of stuff. And
Sure, anime. Mm-hmm.
that's where I first got the idea, not the idea, but the first time I felt, and I said this to the person, the girl, it was a female that brought the game. I gave her my review saying, I don't really feel comfortable with this game. Like, it's got a theme about collecting women as like submissive mistresses that give me points, And the card work, especially sitting here in this coffee shop or a public place, makes me feel incredibly uncomfortable. So going back to Cards Against Humanity, and I'll pitch the question again, like, do you feel that there is some kind of responsibility for people when it comes to games of like, hey, how about we not have a game about collecting women slaves in our mansion or things like that?
Well, I think in like that game, like the cards are so random. It's not like they're so random in their inappropriateness and how you choose to like put them together. And I think the creator or any creator of any game is going to do what they're going to do to make money off the game, or maybe in a game like that they're targeting maybe a specific audience that they know is going to enjoy that kind of a thing, whether you're sitting down and just drinking with friends and want to be wildly inappropriate. I mean, that's probably the target group that creator probably had in mind. And for those people, they find that that's okay because that's their thing, you know? So I think a creator is going to do what the creator is going to want to do, whether they have a specific audience in mind or not.
But
And I think, yeah, you read some of the cards and Cards Against Humanity and you're like, ooh, don't know about that one. Kind of, it does kind of make you kind of go a little bit. But I know when we played the game, if there are cards that I mean, since we own the game and we're choosing to, let's say, host a social activity where we're kind of partaking in the game, I may remove a few of those cards because I'm like, I just don't want those cards to show up because maybe it's something that maybe doesn't really make me feel good. And yeah, I know someone could take it who's not maybe in the same frame of mind as me and really take it to a whole nother level. And so I find that I'm just going to maybe remove those things, kind of take them out of play. But creators are obviously thinking, well, what could one individual do with this and how could they take it to the next level, because that's their purpose for the game. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the director, he could give a flying rip because he's going to do what he's going to do. It's his style. I think someone making a series of games like Cards Against Humanity, the creator's going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah, we don't need grandma going home and Googling bukkake because she didn't know what that meant in the game. And so maybe we'll take that one out. But it's the age-old question, the big philosophical question of, and I know you've heard it before, just because we can doesn't mean we should. Doesn't always mean we should. So just because, like you said, like creators going to do, or Tarantino even says, like, this is my art, I am not going to talk about it. I don't feel like I need to validate anything that I do to you people. With game designers, like you said, they're going to do whatever they're going to do, make a theme about something wildly inappropriate or wildly stupid.
It could be the same thing with their artwork too. Some of their artwork could be extremely offensive. I know I like to play Red Dragon Inn with a group of friends who own the game and every single character. And there are, I mean, some cards and artwork that are just, wildly inappropriate. So, I mean, it goes to not just the sense of the game and the play of the game, but also, like you were saying, like the artwork and having those cards on display, especially if you're not playing privately, you're out in a restaurant or a coffee shop and those cards are on display. I mean, someone could walk by and go, ooh, look at that wench there with her big boobs are kind of falling out or whatever. So, I mean, it goes the same thing with game artwork too,
Yeah, I definitely could see, I could just definitely picture people in my mind walking by seeing these almost bare naked animated ladies and like being like, oh, they're playing some card. What in the world are these people doing? Like, they brought pornography into the coffee shop.
Right, because it can be associated that way for sure. And I think on the lines of like personal integrity, I mean, there are definitely times where sure, my group of friends will, initiate the game and I partake in it. And I know I can't control everybody's thought processes. I can control my thought processes. I can control my gameplay. I can control my game choices. I can choose how far I take the game. out of the box in terms of being appropriate or inappropriate. I can control that. Now, if I'm the one who's initiating the game, I have a little bit more control in that, because then I can say, yeah, I'm going to play this game with my friends because we all enjoy it, but I'm going to remove A, B, C, and D from this box or whatnot, and have maybe a little bit more control in that. So it really comes down to your own personal, when you're playing the game, how far you personally want to take that, because you can't control the other players in the game who are going to be wildly inappropriate. And yes, it may be funny. Yes, you might go, ooh, that was really awkward or inappropriate or whatever. But it also kind of depends the group of friends that you have too. I know with my group of friends, like we know when we've kind of have reached that that boundary. We're like, yeah, let's just stop right there. Or maybe we should just take that card out of the box or whatever. So, I mean, you have to know who you're interacting with too, because some people have no boundaries. I've played a board game once with our core group of friends, and they have other friends that they invited into the group. And I can't remember the game we were playing. It was kind of more of a party themed game. You had to write things down, and a specific individual just was really taking it over the top in terms of inappropriateness. And,
Okay.
and that comes to the point where like, okay, I'm going to take a break from the game and I'm going to go do something else, so it really kind of comes down to your own personal comfort zone. I personally don't have a problem playing that game once in a great while. Like, honestly, the last time we probably took out our own Cards Against Humanity was probably like 2 years ago, maybe. I mean,
Oh, wow.
we don't take it out very often because you actually have to have your group of people together and want to play that specific thing. Now, I will be completely 100% real with you. Tomorrow, which is Saturday, we do games with our friends every Saturday night as our way of connecting with each other through the week. And we have done, Mario Kart. We've done some Jackbox games, party type games through like PlayStation. And then you use the phone as your kind of main device where you're writing things down. And they have different party games pretty much, essentially. And you can all play together as long as you have the phone and the kind of web address with the code, pretty much. And of course, now people can play and interact online with Cards Against Humanity. So of course, our group is like, hey, we should try that and see how it works. And so that is something we're honestly going to be trying out tomorrow night, is playing Cards Against Humanity and seeing how it works when you're obviously not all together. So, I mean, it could have a completely different dynamic. It could be more you're kind of playing it safe, or it might get like wildly kind of out of control. But the group of individuals that we play with, we kind of know each other's comfort zones and boundaries, because we know this person, these types of subject matter makes them really, really uncomfortable because they're really modest and introverted, versus, this one over here, well, I don't particularly like maybe using the abortion card out there in the game. Maybe we should just take that card out, so we know our friends well enough to like kind of know the boundaries where we're not crossing the line. But it doesn't mean that when you're playing with a group of individuals that you're not going to have that one or two people that's going to consistently cross the line, because that's what you do with the game. And in like, that's kind of what the game is about. It's crossing lines, pretty much.
Right. With every form of art or creativity or anything like that, from even stand-up comedy to board games to movies, you have people that are just like always wanting to push the envelope, right? Trying to push that
Right.
creative sort of thing. So jokes, stand-up comedians are just getting, more inappropriate, and movies are getting that way. Art, getting more avant-garde and stuff. So bringing it back to board games, board games are getting more offensive. But I kind of want to talk about something else for a moment,
Right.
switching off of Cards Against Humanity. There are games that are absolutely, I wouldn't necessarily categorize them as offensive, although they could be, but they're just more dumb. So for example, there is a game, I'm sure, I hope you've at least seen it. There's a game about popping pimples. There is a game
I've
about,
heard of the game. I have not partaked.
There's a game about like flushing a toilet, like a toilet sprays toilet water on you and stuff like that. So games that are just like, I don't know if they're necessarily like what I would call inappropriate or offensive, but just like themes that are like, oh, this is so silly. Do we really, just because we can,
Oh, for sure.
should we really have a
And you know,
game about
you go to
squirting
Target
pimples?
and go over to that inappropriate section, you're gonna find not only the toilet one, you're gonna find one that has to deal with like poop and farting, and they're all those inappropriate party games. I don't know why, because people like the more inappropriate side of things. They think it's more funny. I don't know, but I know when you go to Target, you definitely see that side of board games.
There is a game that is legitimately called Pooh, and I forget what the theme is specifically, but it's something about like you're all playing monkeys trapped in the same cage, like throwing your poo at each other, and that's the game. And so again, I go back to that question of, man, just because we can, should we? Do we really? Does the
Yeah.
population or the public really need a game about throwing like poop at each other? I mean,
Well, it also makes me wonder, like, who really buys that, and how many of those games
people
are
do.
actually,
So
and how
I've
many of
played
those games
poo.
are actually sold? Like, I want to know, like, how many people have actually bought that? Like, is it actually bringing in consistent revenue like some of your other popular games? Because I don't see the
Yeah.
same comparison with games like
Well,
that.
one, because
I don't know.
they're big box distributors. Well, big box doesn't mean their size. It means that they're going to be found in Target or Walmart. And
Right.
so people will see them. So they have more exposure. So people will buy like, oh, it's a game about popping pimples and this face like squirts water at you, or like
Oh, that's so gross.
this toilet squirts water. And so, yes, they are going to buy them because there's more exposure to them. They're going to buy them because they think it's just hilarious. And there's some kind of um like not raunchy, but sort of it's kind of inappropriate, but it's like fun because it's presented as like a kind of a kid's game
Well,
because of the
sure.
coloring
Get
and stuff.
together with your neighbors,
There's
bring over the beer, and let's just play this stupid toilet game.
there
That's
is
kind of what it
one
is.
game that another game I want to throw in this category, and then we can move on. I'll ask you a different question. um I don't know what it's called. I I'm so vehemently against this game, I guess you would put it, um, for many, many reasons. But it's the game where you put something in your mouth that
Yes.
exposes like your whole gums and
I
tonsils.
don't want to play that. That looks disgusting. I don't know, hygiene. I
How
don't
did
know. That
this?
just,
Who came up with this game? And then people started posting videos of like their 12-year-old kid trying to say like the rain in Spain falls mainly on a plane or whatever. And it's just like it's supposed to be adorable, but meanwhile I'm seeing just this, oh,
you're saying everything.
like
And
how do we need
saliva
this?
and
Do we need
it's
this
just,
as a game? Like, do we need this? It's more of a novelty, just like the toilet
yeah.
thing and all that. Like, oh, it squirts water at you and stuff. That's how you lose if you get squirted with water. They're
Right.
very
They're not games that
novelty
are going to
games.
stand the test of time. They're not going to be like those games that are, I don't know. Maybe kids will look back on me like, "Oh, do you remember that one toilet flushing game? Oh, that was the best childhood
Yeah,
game ever."
nostalgia is always going to be. Yeah,
Maybe there'll be some nostalgic there. I mean, I don't
yeah,
think we really had a lot of, I feel like the games we had when we were kids had a purpose, whether if it was Payday or Sorry or, you know, Operation. I feel like all those games kind of generally kind of had a sense of purpose, you know,
yeah.
game of life,
Some
you
of the
know.
games that